Ears and Beers, episode 55. What's on tap? Another transfer portal emergency pod here. Somebody just make it stop, please. Before we get into all that, though, this is Ears and Beers, the podcast. I'm Wesley Euler. What are we drinking? If you're watching on YouTube, you can see here, I've got a Bell's Oberon Ale. It's a seasonal beer from Bell's up in Michigan. Fantastic wheat ale. If you've followed us here over the history of the podcast, you know I got a soft spot for wheat beers. So, I'm drinking a Bell's today. Salute. And I deserve this one. It's Thursday afternoon as I record this. As I get a swig in there. I'm working from home today. My daughter's down for a nap. So I deserve this one, especially as we get ready to talk about another transfer portal casualty to WVU athletics. And that's what I'm going to do here today. A little off the cuff. I don't have a ton of notes. I'm doing this after, stop me if you've heard this before, but another big transfer to WVU athletics. Akeem Messador is the guy entering the transfer portal. If you somehow missed it today, the meltdown of Mountaineers all over social media. Here we are again. Another emergency pod after another shocking and crippling transfer. All right, one more swig, and then let's get into this. The reaction is palpable. The angst is palpable. And it might seem crazy to some from the outside, but if you're in Mountaineer Nation, you totally get it. It's absolutely exhausting seeing another kid leave our program who never showed anything other than loving being a Mountaineer, other than being 100% bought in to the program. Another one of those guys to just suddenly leave. Daryl Porter was like that. JCS was like that. Now Akeem Messador. Guys who, all intents and purposes, everything that they did both with their actions and with their words made it seem like they were 100% bought into being a Mountaineer. And then all of a sudden, just like that, they're into the portal. It's exhausting. It is. And, it just continues. Make it stop. When's the bleeding going to stop? I've seen a whole lot of you this afternoon over the last few hours on Twitter, and make sure you're following us on Twitter at Ears and Beers. I've seen a lot of you tweet, and I think we've got a pretty good, we've curated a pretty good WVU timeline on the Ears and Beers account. Like a lot of you talking about how your interest in renewing your season tickets and continuing to invest your time and your money into WVU athletics is going away. And this is something I've talked about on the podcast before. Hell, I did one of these emergency transfer podcasts like a month ago, and I mentioned this. Like, so much of the game of college football and what we love about college football gets back to having very passionate, middle-class, middle-tier programs and fan bases who show up and show out, beer burp, and are financially and emotionally invested in their teams every single year, despite knowing that they've got a really small shot at winning their conference championship and an even smaller chance at contending for a national title. And it's all because of the connection that you feel with your school, with your program, and certainly in the case of WVU, a connection with the state as well, too. You hear a lot about the 1.8 million, right? We talk more about the 1.8 million West Virginians than we talk about the alumni that the school produces. That's the connection that a lot of these programs have with their fan bases, with their alumni, and like I said, especially in the case of WVU, with the state where they're located as well. The portal era is just, it's ruining that. It's killing that. And I've said it before, and I mean it. Like, this isn't just lip service. I will be in Morgantown every fall Saturday when there's a home game. It doesn't matter. My dog Oli's trying to jump up here onto the microphone. He's so fired up. I'll be there every Saturday. It doesn't matter to me, the players, the coach, the conference, right? I've said here before on the pod, I don't care if we play in the Big 12, the Big East, the Big 10, the ACC, Conference USA, the Sun Belt, it doesn't matter. I'll be there because I'm a nut job and I love it. But I'm also not going to lie to you and say that it feels the same either. I'm not gonna do that because it doesn't. I would just be lying to you, and I'd be lying to myself. Conference realignment has already killed a huge part of the soul that was college football, and in regional rivalries, obviously. With the movement of WVU and Virginia Tech and Miami and Pitt and Syracuse, with the movement of Texas A&M and some of these other programs. Regional rivalries, yeah, they're still there, but Kansas doesn't play Missouri anymore. A&M and Texas don't play. There's no backyard brawl every year on the schedule. I know it's coming back now for the next 4 years, but you get what I'm saying there. Like, especially for the WVU fan. Conference realignment, I mean, it took a piece of your soul. It did. It snatched some of your soul. College football playoff has changed the landscape of the sport. Now, if you don't make it to the playoff, your season doesn't matter. Forget winning the conference, forget winning major bowl games. It does not matter. That's completely changed since the BCS era, when winning a major bowl game was the way that you put punctuation on a great season, like WVU did in the Sugar Bowl and in the Fiesta Bowl and in the Orange Bowl. That landscape has changed. And I understand why so many of you are jaded, are disenfranchised. It's hard to continue to feel the same way about a thing, that certainly from our perspective as it relates to Mountaineer Nation and WVU, just doesn't feel as fun or as special as it used to. And the worst part is it's completely out of our control, right? The only way we as fans can do anything about it is like if we all become billionaires overnight and just start donating truckloads of money to WVU athletics. But other than that, our hands are tied. And it just really sucks that WVU football is in turmoil here. Right as Pitt is in a bit of an upswing and the backyard brawl is about to return. Like, that's the worst timing of anything in the world right now. That is the worst thing in the world right now. Forget Russia. Forget alopecia debates. It's Pitt being on the upswing and us being on the downswing right as the backyard brawl is about to return for 4 years. But to be serious, I keep coming back to this. And I think I might have mentioned this on an earlier podcast as well, too. When will WVU start to play dirty as well? Because it's pretty clear that these aren't just disgruntled guys who are unhappy with their situation in Morgantown and are looking to leave. There's tampering. There's a lot of money being thrown around. We don't even have to speculate about that anymore. It's just the truth. So I keep coming back to, when does WVU play dirty as well? And I know we don't have as much money as Georgia and Miami, LSU, and a lot of these schools, but we have more money certainly than other Power 5 programs. And we have more cachet and money and draw and facilities than a lot of G5 programs. So when do we start to ransack and tamper with schools lower than us on the food chain? The same way bigger programs are doing to us. It's kill or be killed. Forget doing things the right way. Forget running a clean program, whatever that's meant. The NCAA isn't going to do anything about it because there's no rules or regulations with any of this. It's kill or be killed. College football right now is the Wild West. There's no sheriff in town. There's no lawman to come and hang you for breaking the rules. It's the Wild West. Kill or be killed. And eventually you're going to have to get down in the mud and play dirty too. But there's a lot that goes into this. There is. Like, I understand for a lot of people, it feels like WVU football and basketball, there's like a Major League Baseball element here. There's like a European soccer element here where, there's really only a handful of teams that contend every year, and everyone else is just kind of bottom feeders, and everyone else is just trying to survive and just trying to, stay in the top half of the league, not get relegated, hang in the division race if you're one of these low-budget baseball teams, versus really truly believing that you could win titles and contend. And that, like, the ecosystem currently of WVU athletics plays into this too. And when I say WVU athletics, really I mean football and men's basketball, the two sports that we care about the most. Like, both had a losing season this year, and that was the first time that both have had a losing season in 2 decades, in 20 years. And both programs have been crushed, have been ransacked by the portal. Like, this isn't new. For all the, the Winston Wrights and JCS and Akeem Messidor and Daryl Porter and Sean McNeil and Isaiah Cottrell and Jalen Bridges, and God, this is depressing as I regurgitate all those names. It goes back further, too. Oscar Tshiebwe, Tyke Smith, on and on. There's a whole lot of anger and animosity, I think, right now, that this is happening to both of our beloved programs, and they're struggling and they're losing at the same time. The reaction is palpable from the fan base, from Mountaineer Nation, every time we hear the words transfer portal now. And again, if you're in lockstep with all this, that makes sense. How many straws can you have that break the camel's back before the camel just gets crushed? And that's where we're at. But I do want to stick to just football, though, for the sake of this emergency podcast episode, or else I could really get off the rails here. I do want to say, though, I don't think that this is specifically a Neal Brown problem. And I wouldn't label myself as a Neal Brown apologist. I wouldn't label myself as someone who crucifies Neal Brown. I'm somewhere in between. I'm lukewarm on the head ball coach right now. Like, this is NIL, this is booster, this is tampering, this is money all over it. And it feels very similar to Daryl Porter in that way. It feels very similar to JCS in that way because, again, these are guys that showed no signs of being disgruntled. These are guys both through their words and their posts on social media and their actions that all seemed 100% bought in until the second that they weren't. Like, you don't do what Akeem Messidor just did without some kind of tampering. You don't sit through meetings. You don't participate in live action contact practices, meetings and drills and all this, and then just up and decide to leave on a Thursday afternoon after a position meeting. It just doesn't happen that way. And if you were, the audio's out there on Twitter, the video's out there on Twitter now, Neal Brown gave a little impromptu press conference to members of the media to announce this, and you can just tell, like, he's taken this hard. Neal straight up said that this hurts and that he's sad when he addressed the media this afternoon. Neal's talked about transfers in the past, not in the way that he did today. He said things like, not all attrition is bad attrition. He said things like, we've probably benefited from the transfer portal more than we've lost. But if you look at his demeanor today, if you listen to his tone, that was clearly not the case. He was hurt. He was surprised. He was saddened by this. As he should be. Because it's one thing to be trying to build a program at a place like WVU where, you're never going to recruit like Ohio State and Clemson and Oklahoma, and it's just not going to happen. You're not going to have the money and the facilities that they have at Alabama and Miami. But this makes the playing field, it tips the scales even more against programs like WVU. And it's got to be frustrating for Neal. It's got to be frustrating for everybody that's dealing with this. And I think you saw a lot of that from Neal Brown today. The solution is pretty clear, right? I mean, the NCAA has to regulate this somehow. There needs to be a transfer window. I think probably two of them. One before the season, one after the season. Maybe one as soon as the season ends, and then one maybe between spring ball and the start of the regular season. There needs to be guidelines. Like, I think if your coach leaves, yeah, you could transfer somewhere without sitting out a year. If you come in as a freshman and then you want to transfer, clearly the program wasn't what you thought, it wasn't the right fit, you were there for 1 year as a freshman and it's not working out, and you want to go, yeah, I think you should probably be able to go without having to sit out a year if it's after your freshman year. But there needs to be guidelines to this because it is the Wild West, because it's unregulated, because it's being ruled by tampering and corruption and money right now. There needs to be a window or windows. There needs to be guidelines to this. And yes, there needs to be, again, with exceptions, like I just laid out, coaches leaving, 1 year and done type thing. But there needs to be reinstated where these guys just can't transfer at will and not have to sit out and are eligible to play right away. And obviously not all transfers are bad. Because again, there's situations where guys want to be closer to family. Coach that brought you to the program ends up leaving. And just as we all know in workplace situations, in school situations, just fits that aren't right. Not all transfers are bad, obviously. But the green light now for programs and agents and boosters and everyone in between to get in the ears of these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids without any guidelines, without any rules, without any ramifications, it's just asinine, and it has to stop. And I realize I'm saying that through my gold and blue glasses, and WVU has been decimated by this, and the football program has seen an insane exodus, and it's happened in basketball now a little bit too. So I'm slanted in that regard. If I was sitting here as an Oklahoma fan, if I was sitting here as a Baylor fan, if I was sitting here as an Ohio State fan, I probably wouldn't give a rip because it's not affecting us. But that gets back to what I said about the middle-class, middle-tier programs. There's way more of us than there are of them. And college football needs that passion, needs that connection with your alma mater, with your team, with your state to thrive. That is the ecosystem of college sports. There's way more WVUs and Texas Techs and Iowa States than there are Oklahomas and Texases. It's not even close. And eventually, if you start alienating all these other fan bases, well, you might just have the SEC and the Big Ten, and hey, those conferences and those schools probably wouldn't care. Just create a super league, right? But that ain't college football. And I am not naive. I realize this is the United States of America. We are a capitalistic country where money talks and all the other bullshit walks. But that's part of what made college football feel so different and so special, right? Is that it always seemed like it wasn't a professional sports league. And we all want these guys to be able to capitalize on their name and image and likeness. If Jalen Bridges can make that pepperoni roll money, Jalen Bridges should be able to make that pepperoni roll money. But there's a fine line there between what we've got going on now and insanity, and we're flirting with it. And you start to alienate more and more of these fan bases, you're going to end up hurting the sport as a whole. And again, I'm not naive enough. If I was an Alabama fan, an LSU fan, an Ohio State fan, I probably wouldn't be saying this. But there's a lot more of us than there are of them. So, there you go. I will say this, though. Neal Brown was fired up at the end of his little press conference today. He said this, and I quote, "I want to leave with this. In 154 days, that's what it is. We've got the countdown going. 154 days, we're going to show up at Heinz Field and have a damn good football team lineup, a group of guys who believe and are committed to the university and the state and play their asses off for the name on the front and not the name on the back." End quote. Well, here's to hoping that that's Neal Brown's Herb Brooks moment. Who do you play for? The United States of America. Who do you play for? The West Virginia Mountaineers. And the name on the front of the jersey is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back. So that's all I got. All I know is that the offense better take massive steps forward this season. Or this team, it could be another long year. September 1st against Pitt, 154 days, looms larger and larger and larger with the more questions that are around the program. You know, the reactions, good or bad, after the backyard brawl are going to be enough to move mountains. It's going to be seismic. It's either we're going to lose to Pitt and Neal Brown doesn't have it and our program's in shambles and we've got to blow it all up and start over again, or we're going to beat Pitt and it's Neal Brown's got this all fixed, Graham Harrell is Jesus, and we're going to win the Big 12. It's going to be seismic. It's going to be biblical. But the offense better take some massive steps forward, or I don't know how many games we're going to be winning. So here's to you, JT Daniels. Morgantown needs you more than you will know. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm Wesley Euler. This has been episode 55 of the Eers and Beers podcast. A little instant reaction as the transfer portal once again swiftly kicks all of Mountaineer Nation in the groin. We'll be back at the weekend, Adam and I, with a full podcast. We'll get into some of this, some of the things going on with the basketball program as well, too. New women's head basketball coach, the baseball team in the middle of a brawl series here with Pitt. So we'll get into all that more in depth this weekend, but just wanted to take the opportunity here to do a little venting with you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. This was episode 55 of the Ears of Beers podcast. Make sure you're subscribing and getting us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube as well, too. I'm Wesley Euler. Talk to you guys this weekend. Let's go Mountaineers. Let's go drink some beers.